And you're in Chicago, which was kind of like a real hotbed for a lot of activity. I mean, it's one of the most segregated cities in America, and back then probably more so. I spent a couple of years there, and the discrepancies between the South Side and the North Side. And then, I mean, wasn't the Democratic Convention there in '68 where people?
I was there.
You were there, where people were getting shot. I mean, it was.
I got tear gassed.
You got tear gassed.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the police were chasing to beat us. But in those days, I was a pretty fast runner, so I escaped.
Is it hard for people to understand just how hectic and tense it was back then with, leaders getting assassinated and Robert Kennedy dying and Martin Luther King dying and the stress of the draft and the images coming back from Vietnam and all the civil rights? I mean, have you ever seen a time where it was that tense or tumultuous in the world since?
Well, those situations, to be thoughtful, brought us out of complacency. We just saw things that were so troubling of our times and our leadership that we really felt, many of us, that we couldn't be a part of this. We had to make a difference.
And when you looked at religion, kind of the traditional religions, you saw, again, similar types of embedded hypocrisy and hate. And so you went on a journey, believing somehow deep inside that there was some type of universal love.
And that brought me, Brian, to London.
To London. What makes you, at such a young age, believe that you could find something that would unite, that would be loving? Because when I was 17, I wasn't thinking that big.
I would have to say, because there was such a feeling of need in my heart to find that essence, I believed it was there.
Okay.
And the more I studied and experienced the various spiritual paths, I had experience that it was there.
And so you come to London. What's it like in 1970?
The counterculture was very strong.
What does that look like?
There was a lot of people, some people call them hippies. And my welcome to London was very difficult because I had no money, and somehow or other I had enough to get a ferry from, I think, the Hook of Holland. And when I arrived in England at the coast, the police took me to a back room and asked how much money we had, and I had long hair. And they interrogated us for hours and hours and hours. I was with one friend, and they threatened to shave our heads, which is kind of ahead of the time because I ended up doing that myself. But they threatened to put us in prison. They threatened to beat us. They just didn't want anybody with long hair coming into their country. It was quite amazing. And ultimately, they just kind of let us in.
Okay.
And said, if you make one wrong move, you're going to be in prison. So we hitchhiked eventually up to London. And, I was making the scene, and I was actually really popular, and everything was going really well. I was staying on the floor of a Catholic church across from the British Parliament on Lambeth Road with all these travelers who had nothing. But the people I was meeting and the experiences, it was just wonderful. But there was something missing. I would sit for hours and hours and hours under the starlight or the moonlight on the bank of the River Thames and just try to understand where the current of the river of my life was actually going to lead me. And it was almost like a battle. There was something within me that wanted a spiritual direction in my life. But then my mind and the life around me was so much engrossed in just in pleasures and popularity and all of these things. And it was like a battle. And it was here in London that one time I was sitting in Trafalgar Square among the pigeons and the tourists and the business people, and I was meditating, and I experienced something so deep and so sublime in that meditation. I opened my eyes and I just saw London as a beautiful place of family, because I saw everything in relation to God. And then I decided my life has to be for a spiritual purpose.